Shakespeare's mind behind Macbeth. Chapter 4. The character of Macbeth. Macbeth, a murderer, shows himself more than what his character could really be. And further investigation into the character shows us complex matters that need inventive interpretations. The first impossibility is that whether such a man Macbeth could commit such strange deeds. I quote, "A man like Macbeth with great qualities would not have committed such actions." But Shakespeare less reveals than confuses. Dr. Robert Bridges. If we overlook the improbabilities of Macbeth in murdering Duncan, we further face some fundamental problems. He should have, after being a king, proved to be a great king than Duncan. But no such ability or nobility which was spoken of Macbeth is found. I quote, "We also miss something in Macbeth's character described as noble before the crime. When his goal was attained, we would expect his better nature to reappear, that he would try to atone for his crime by glorious deeds, instead of which he advances from one crime to another like a madman, and his former better nature never appears." Unquote. He sinks down with such a terrible fear and laments for the deeds he had committed. Yet he further starts with the same evil mind, shows us Macbeth is a hypocrite. I quote, "Macbeth is a hypocrite who, speaking fair words to the one whom he means to slay, and affects to lament over the corpse of his victim." Further, sometimes we exactly feel like saying what Bodenstedt had said. Macbeth is incarnate self-seeking, envy, and malevolence, and he dies as he lived, a hardened, callous, unrepentant sinner. But what revolves strongly in our mind is that Macbeth had natural feelings of humanity and conscience, which in fact are never there. I quote, "Neither Macbeth nor Lady Macbeth had conscience, and the dramatic crux was to exhibit the action of Nemesis in such characters." F.S. Boyce. To talk about remorse, I quote, "Macbeth is commonly spoken of a tragedy of remorse, but neither hero nor heroine have remorse, bodying forth of unearthly fears and more than mortal misery. If at all there is remorse in the deep sighing of Macbeth, it is not of conscience." I quote, "Macbeth's remorse is more agony of failure than of sin. Conscience only intrudes in dreams. Awake, he cares not a pin for his crimes." This accounts for the unbroken rapidity of crime in the play, whereas guilt is not the natural element of Macbeth. Professor Stoll. Further, Frederick Bodenstedt says, "Macbeth fears neither God nor devil." Further investigation shows us the power that grips the play has something to do with the knowledge of the complexity of the character of Macbeth. I quote, "The power beneath the surface, then, is the myth of the fall from a state of grace, whether the fall from the light of God or the expulsion from the paradise on earth." Herbert R. Carson Jr. Yes, Macbeth looks like Shakespeare's attempt to dramatize Satan with the fullest beauties of an impossible quality of poetic and romantic abilities. I quote, "The Macbeth world is insubstantial, an emptiness, its bottom knocked out of it, a hideous nightmare falling, like Satan dropping in his flight through chaos." Wilson Knight. The play is full of direct references to devilish Macbeth. He is a hellkite and a hellhound. Hell can produce neither a devil more enabled nor a hotter name. Shakespeare's constant equation of Macbeth with bestiality in Act 5. "My fell of hair, hairness in our back, They have tied me to a stake, bare like I must fight the course. Our rarer monster, baited with the rabble's curse, suggests that tradition that both the fallen angels and titans were transformed into monsters after their fall. Macbeth. By this great clatter, one of greatest note seems bruited, also shows the beast, which in the beginning Lady Macbeth reveals Macbeth's nature. What beast was it then? The one major aspect besides the power beneath the play is the prophecies and predictions with which Macbeth has been knit. None of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Birnam wood to hidance in any hill shall come against him. For a positive and better understanding of the character of Macbeth, I would like to discuss 6 aspects of the character. 1. Macbeth before he appears. 2. The origin of sin. 3. The one that pulled him to the deed. 4. The angel and the devil in Macbeth. 5. The rising of the dead that appealed Macbeth. 6. Macbeth with prophecies and predictions. 1. Macbeth before he appears. Shakespeare's Macbeth had qualities entirely distinct from that of any other Macbeths of other sources. Shakespeare had overcharged Macbeth with the great qualities that the basest qualities of Macbeth are sometimes forgotten. I quote, Macbeth, according to Holinshed, was regarded unfavorable for his cruelty, which was considered as much a drawback as Duncan's undue clemency. This trait of Macbeth, stressed in Holinshed, is entirely omitted by Shakespeare. His Macbeth is valiant and deadly in battle, but without any personal cruelty at the opening of the play. D.W. Harding. Macbeth was from the beginning a courageous soldier. His warrior honor is very much emphasized. He is brave Macbeth, valor's minion, Belenor's bridegroom, noble Macbeth. Duncan shows deep affection towards Macbeth. Oh, valiant cousin, worthy gentleman! And he had great satisfaction mixed with unlimited joy. At the very presence of Macbeth, Duncan is moved by compassion and bursts out, Oh, worthy cousin, the sin of my ingratitude even now was heavy on me. Thou art so far before, that swiftest wing of recompense is slow. To overtake this, would thou hadst less deserved, might have been mine. Only I have left to say, more is thy due, than more than all can pay. And continues with act of overflowing loving kindness. I have begun to plant thee, and will labor to make thee full of growing. Duncan's verse. More is thy due, more than all that can pay. And I have begun to plant thee reveals something more than a human being can understand. This clearly shows that what Duncan pays Macbeth could be more than all can pay. Here, Macbeth's exalted state is glorious that he looks like a god, or the sort, through the words of Duncan. I have brought golden opinions from all sorts of people. This clearly shows Macbeth was honored by all sorts of people. Even all through the drama, we observe the nature of innocence and weakness in Macbeth. I quote, Macbeth contains no villain, no Iago, no Edmund. Evil is alive of itself, a protagonist in its own right. Margaret Webster. There is no blot on the character of Macbeth before he appears. 2. The origin of sin. Nobody has authority to suppose that the murder was pre-planned before the play begins. If anybody has such idea, it does only mean he has underestimated Shakespeare. When Shakespeare allotted 1/3 of the play for a single murder, and when he had only tried to show clear picture of the soul, he should have undoubtedly given the details of the origin of sin. The first words of Macbeth, "So foul and fairy I have not seen," probably be the origin of the sin. And before this moment, Macbeth should be noble by all means. Shakespeare shows these seconds very clearly. The words uttered by Macbeth are the words of witches. Fair is foul and foul is fair, and indicates the birth of sin. If the vanishing witches are believed to be the first evil thoughts of Macbeth, and the deserted place to be in the brains of Macbeth, it would be very clear that Shakespeare presented the origin of sin very clearly. The short scene of the witches should be the dramatization of the evil first thought of sin in the mind of Macbeth. Then, when Macbeth opens his mouth with the same words, the force of the evil in the shape of the witches continues to overpower him with hopeful predictions. It would be difficult to explain and prove that the visual influence of the evil undoubtedly surrounds Macbeth. After the witches vanish, Macbeth says about his first evil thought, which exactly started with the words, "Foul is fair, and fair is foul. My thought, whose murder is yet but fantastical, shakes my single state of man." Further, the evil-affected noble brain becomes dull brain, and he could not withstand the power of the current of evil thought in which ambition is overflowing. But when Duncan declares his son to be the Prince of Cumberland, Macbeth's evil thought strengthens, and he solicits evil forces. "Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep disguise. The eye winks at the hand, and let that be which the eye fears when it is done to see." It is clear this is all about the beginning of the plan of the murder, and nobody is responsible for this act but the words of Lady Macbeth. Was the hope drunk? And what beast was it then, and made you break this enterprise to me? Clearly shows us that Lady Macbeth is also the active member of this conspiracy. If so, the plotting of the murder should have taken place before the beginning of the play. But what clears us of this doubt is the relation between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And I was discussing the oneness of the two characters. It would be possible to say that Macbeth has got the influence of the evil power which he himself allowed to rule him, made all things possible, which Macbeth alone could not do. Lady Macbeth also continued the part played by the witches, so all is within Macbeth. 3. The one that pulled him to the deed. Lady Macbeth clearly pulled him to the deed. And what we see in her is the visual power of evil. It always looks as if Macbeth could not be able to do the deed, and he was assisted by the power of evil which has authority over him. In the first phase, the witches, and in the second phase, Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth addressing Macbeth as the witches did indicate the link that the role of the witches continued in Lady Macbeth, or they have won the better shape, and the better shape is Lady Macbeth. As the ambition grows in Macbeth, the evil too grows in its shape, now comes very close as his wife. The connection is made through the letter, and the current passes to Lady Macbeth, and she holds him in her claw. Her invocation, "Come ye spirits," somehow reminds us of Macbeth's "Stars, hide your fires." What happened here is that the evil that entered into the mind of Macbeth is separated by Shakespeare for the dramatic convenience and showed us the clear struggle that goes on in a single mind when the extremities are good and bad are involved in a battle in which the good fades away. In fact, Lady Macbeth herself is the embodiment of the spirits she calls for. She says, "I may pour my spirits in thine ear. His first words to Lady Macbeth, "My dearest love, Duncan comes tonight," shows us his dull brain and reminds his words, "My dull brain was wrought with things forgotten." He is pale and hears her keenly, and she dictates him, "Oh, never shall sun that morrow see, and be the serpent under it." The struggle is going on, the noble becoming dull, yet not fades away fully, and says, "We will speak no further." But Lady Macbeth looks towards him as his product and orders him, "Only look up clear. To alter favor ever is to fear. Leave all this rest to me." Here Lady Macbeth plays the role of a man and Macbeth the opposite. Here we see the two sides of a conflict in Macbeth. It is clear that Lady Macbeth is pulling him and Macbeth being pulled. But in Act 1, Scene 7, the long soliloquy of Macbeth puzzles us, where Macbeth, without Lady Macbeth, speaks contrary to how he appeared in the above scenes. Here his brain is dull. No struggle to quit the project. Only discussing the further consequences if it were done. When it is done, then it were well. What Macbeth spoke previously should be false. No, he spoke with all his heart. To bridge the gap, there is only one way, that is, when Lady Macbeth is not with him, her part is played by him. Once again, we should believe that these persons are not two, but the two sides of a conflict. When he cannot withstand the evil, then she comes again. And this we see after this soliloquy, when he says, "I have no spur." Then he once again becomes a dull brain. She comes and he becomes meek and says, "We will proceed no further in this business." Lady Macbeth's, "Was the hope drunk?" And Macbeth's, "Pretty peace." Lady Macbeth's, "What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me?" Had unusual power. She drags him with authority, and it is what he wants. "I have no spur," and which he cannot withstand or accept. Anyway, he is dragged to the feet, but not with a lady at all, but with such a power of evil itself. Evil power is clearly visual, and as it was much accepted, it is what interferes with authority, which shows us, as Macbeth has voluntarily accepted evil to lead him towards his goals. 4. The angel and the devil in Macbeth. We can make a grand picture of Macbeth before we hear him. And all through the drama, he is presenting his heart and soul through his voice. We can see on the one side a child, if not an angel, and on the other side a devil. The one major element in his character is the duality, which would make us doubt the very design of his character. I quote, "The duality of Macbeth's nature is of course undeniable. He has enormous physical courage. What is his trade? He exceeds at it and is proud of it. Yet he has a sensitivity of soul which makes him a prey to very trick of imagination. His senses are preternaturally sharp. It is absurd to suppose that such a temperament is incompatible with military valor." Margaret Webster. Shakespeare must know the problems of presenting the very impossible extremities in Macbeth. And surely there might be some exceptional reason in presenting the duality. Macbeth has imperial magnificence, but the evil clearly overtakes all that Macbeth had. I quote, "Imperial magnificence is continually suggested, only to be blurred by the dark and evil effects." Wilson Knight. The clear view we find in reading the play is not a military journal's villainy, but a strange opposition to the supreme glory of kingship by some supernatural powers. I quote, "The evil is opposite to the supreme glory of kingship." Wilson Knight. A better understanding of the character should believe Macbeth to be Satan, an angel opposing the creator. Then all is but the dramatization of the possible conflict that goes on in such a character. So, the imaginative powers, the rational thinking, and great wisdom are found with the devilish deeds. When some of the words of the witches come true, the ambition plans for the best, and immediately his sensitive ability and his wisdom says, "My thought whose murder at is but fantastical shakes my single state of man." He really does not want to bear with such terror, but something extreme has happened. He cannot restrain himself, and nothing is what is not. He even won't talk something about his bad luck, but continues in his movement towards his determined destiny. Come what may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. Why time runs through the roughest day is what shows us the key factor, that is, he himself has permitted evil to rule him. When Malcolm is declared as the Prince of Cumberland by Duncan, Macbeth devilishly hastens with his murderous plans. "Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires. The eye winks at the hand, and let that be which the eye fears when it is dark to see." He pretty well knew how sinful the deed is which the eye fears when it is done to see. He has become the villain, yet his wisdom has not left him. But when Lady Macbeth takes his responsibility and asks him, "And you must put this night's great business into my dispatch," we can't accept. Might be because his wisdom works, and he says, "We will speak no further." The difference is found when Macbeth is alone and when he is with Lady Macbeth. When he is alone, he plans fully, but when with his lady, he exhibits his good side only, but she clearly drags him towards the evil end. This shows us that Lady Macbeth is the agent of evil and Macbeth her victim. As Macbeth himself seeking the same end, it would be clear that Lady Macbeth is the other side of Macbeth. When Macbeth is alone, his mind contains two sides. If it were done when it is done, then it were well. It were done quickly. If the assassination could trample up the consequences and catch us with his success. But this blow might be the all and the end all. And he knows the consequences, the judgment, and too, in every eye, the tears shall drown the wind. Yet he won't give up the idea, as he would speak to lady, but seeks help. "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent." After the first murder, Macbeth would not need any help from Lady Macbeth or anybody else to murder Banquo. What all struggled to face in the first murder is perhaps conscience, even not, but a sort of dismal conflict which can't exactly bear the full evil, if not completely do away with the evil. At the same time, he had all evil in mind. This shows us that lady should be the other side of Macbeth, which would fully possess Macbeth only if he murders Duncan. The visual problem of the two opposite things in one could be wiped out if Macbeth's all business up to the murder should be Satan's plight towards God in a very little time, where he had no conflict at all, but one decision. In the final stage of the conflict, Macbeth raises his full voice and says, "We will proceed no further." But the fact is that he just before a moment was seeking help. "I have no spur." Lady Macbeth reminds him of his forgotten things. The hope was the hope drunk, and pursues him with her authority. He cries out, "Prithee, peace," which shows his noble struggle to come out of the planned project, because it is so strange that it is the business beyond a man. It is not just killing a human being, it is killing the Creator, opposing the imperial magnificence. Only because Macbeth is like an angel, he could not fully fall into the evil, or he struggles the best. But what makes him yield to the deed is the evil in himself to which he has surrendered himself. The evil demand him. What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? And he yields. The vision of the dagger too gives way to know how evil pursued him to suppress his nobility. Even when he goes to kill Duncan, his grand heart is seen. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell. His reporting, I have done the deed, can't at all show him as a villain, but as a clean and bare heart of a child is found in him. This is a sorry night. Also shows as how terrified Macbeth is, not like the one who achieved his goal. But wherefore could not I pronounce Amen? I had most need of blessing. Clearly shows his great innocence, which could be of an angel's. Here the ambition of Macbeth should be doubted. If he were ambitious, it would be impossible to keep such a bare heart. His soul, like the story of a great soul of the species greater than human beings. He heard a voice, "Sleep no more! Macbeth does murder sleep, which is the chief nourisher in life's feast. It is not of worldly things he is craving, even in the strange hours, but the very natural things. Shows himself totally different from any villain we have known. Besides that, it is not because he is scared of these things, but because this loss he can never afford to lose. After realizing the loss, then he feared to go again to the chamber. This too, not because he had no courage, but only because his noble heart accepts the punishment for the sin he has committed. What all he wants is, "Wake Duncan with thy knocking." It would, thou couldest. It would be difficult to say he had now any trace of ambition in his heart. To know my deed, it were best not know myself. This is what exactly the strangeness of the deed. And this expression tops in showing Macbeth the wisest one, or one like an angel. Had I died an hour before this chance, I had lived a blessed time. For from this instant there is nothing serious in mortality. All is but toys. Renown and grace is dead. The wine of life is drawn, and the mere lees is left this vault to brag of. This is the truth we know, and we see all through the drama. And such is the crime he had committed. He becomes the king and plans the murder of Banquo and proves to be a true villain. But what hurts him here is totally different. The raising of the dead. And he is seen to be literally scared and destroyed. Only in the first murder he is somewhat individualistic. After that, he is the instrument of evil with no values at all, except a tone of high poetic philosophy. 5. The rising of the dead that appeals Macbeth. The two murders have got different means and meanings to Macbeth. The first murder setting a slaughter on the very peace of mind, and the second on the sovereignty of Macbeth. In fact, the strangeness that results in Macbeth is almost the same with the two murders. But the second murder has got the capacity to pluck out the least confidence in Macbeth, or maybe the king in Macbeth. The murder is not an end with the death, but it starts working on Macbeth only after the rising of the dead. Though some strong link is missing in the continuity of the terror of Macbeth, which started at the presence of Banquo's ghost and continued up to his death. Not by the ghost of Banquo, but by some other characters who, of course, has got some exceptional powers not born of a woman, as Banquo has got. Anyhow, it is very clear to say that the crisis of this play is in the presence of the ghost of Banquo, which shows us the most worried Macbeth. The birth of the first murder causes foul is fair and fair is foul. a total upset of the peaceful state of Macbeth. And my thought, whose murder is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man. But in critical times he could not progress. We will proceed no further in this business. But his wife, with an extraordinary nerve power, pulls him to the deed. After the murder, he feels for the loss of God and sleep. But here in the second murder, he has earned enough courage and sufficient villainy to plan the murder. He would not fear to count the blood drops of dead Banquo, or would fear for the sort of consequences he did face with the murder of Duncan. Perhaps his experience had taught him Crown is the center of the two murders, but the fear around the two murders is different. In the first, the divine image of Duncan, and in the second, the raising of the dead. Why it is Banquo's ghost, not Duncan's, that hunts him is the big question. In fact, Macbeth had a good deal of experience, out of which he could sup off his foolish imaginative fear. Logically, it would upset as how Shakespeare presented it so illogically. If it is the fear of his crown, why it is Banquo and not Fleance to worry him? He should have further plotted the murder of Fleance, which has no mention of it at all. Further, if we continue our search positively, we have to find some strong and true reason for the terror of Macbeth. Before the murder of Banquo, one strange thing is made to be known to us by Macbeth in the natural expression of lady. But in them, nature copies no return. Macbeth, there is comforted, they are assailable. And this happens. Banquo rises from his grave. But the knowledge of this beforehand is what puzzles us. This gives us way once again to accept Macbeth as Satan, and Satan's kingship was put to check when Jesus raised from the dead and gave salvation to all to regain paradise. There is strangeness in the appearance of the ghost. The dear look on that which might appeal the devil. The fact about this strangeness is clearly present in the words of Macbeth. Blood hath been shed ere now. In the olden times, ere human statute purged to gentle wheel. Aye, and since too, murders have been performed too terrible for the years. The time has been that the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on the crowns and pushes from our stools. This is more strange than such a murder is. And it will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Auguries and understood relation have by magpies and cogs and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood. This is not the fear of his being punished, but surely the day of judgment biblical. What all presented in this play is exceptional, and one should not restrict himself to open his mouth to say something exceptional like Macbeth is Shakespeare's dramatization of Satan. To review, the thinking of Macbeth before the first murder pertaining to the murder is not exactly of the murder, but something more serious and terrible than what murder could ever produce. Even after the murder, the issue of Banquo is also something beyond the problems of his crown. When Banquo's ghost appears, it is not something of his psychological imbalance or the fear of a ghost, but something very serious about the rising of the dead, which actually seems to be a check to the very royalty of Macbeth. If all these things need a true answer, the possible better way is to see Satan in Macbeth. 6. Macbeth with prophecies and predictions. Most of the critics always try to escape from giving any importance to these prophecies and predictions with which the character of Macbeth is well knit. None of the critics ever try to find some major aspects. Only thing they say is that there are visual effects of supernatural or evil. To have a clear assessment of the existence of prophecies, it would be easier to say that the unusual pace of the play is but the strength of the prophecies only. I quote, "If supernatural is eliminated, nothing is left." The first prophecies by the witches, "All hail Macbeth, hail to the Ten of Glamis," All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Ten of Cawdor! All hail Macbeth, that shall be king hereafter. To say what role these prophecies play on this play, it would be better to say what play would be left without these prophecies. Only nothing. Our critics always have cleverer ways to follow their sentimental paths. They say that witches only foretold what would happen in course of time, and that Macbeth need not be a villain at all. Every reader should always should know and believe that the play is built on the foundation of two naked truths. One, the witches generated from the thunder and lightning. Two, they disappeared. The prudent world of Shakespearean criticism failed to accept Macbeth as the world's greatest drama because they did not truly believe these two things as the true creation of Shakespeare. But it is clearly observed the first entrance of the witches and the atmosphere they created, so foul and fairy a day I have never seen, are done by Shakespeare as he really needs it all in this way only. The first two acts are but the shadow of these prophecies. Then the third act is made by the stuff of the next prophecies to Banquo, lesser than Macbeth and greater. Not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. In the fourth act, we again had a bunch of prophecies. Beware of Macduff, beware of Thane of Fife, laugh to scorn the powers of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Birnam wood to high Dunsinane hill shall come against him. With these prophecies, the rest of the play is made. Why Macbeth's character is knit with so many unusual qualities could not be easily answered as the trickery of Shakespeare. If there is trickery, there should be something beyond it, and a major cause only should be behind it. The top secret of Macbeth, without controversy, should be only to see Saturn in Macbeth, or to say Macbeth is Shakespeare's dramatic name of Satan.